The next thing to concern yourself with is cross-origin security. The concept here is that you want to be able to support calling from other domains. If you're implementing an API and you want to use it from your own website, that works fine with Web API. But if you need to call it from other domains, if you have other websites that you want to be able to call in and use your API, straight from JavaScript on their pages, that's not going to work. And so there's a couple of ways you can get around this. First is to support something called JSONP as a format. JSONP allows you to wrap the response of a call in a small piece of JavaScript to ensure that when it's called back, that JavaScript is executed. Because JavaScript files can be called from multiple domains, browsers typically allow this, because JSONP comes across the wire as application/JavaScript. The other way is to use something called cross-origin resource sharing. And there's some support for this coming in Web API 2, but we'll show you in a minute how that's going to work. But let's start by supporting JSONP itself. Back in Visual Studio, we're going to want to support it as a new type of formatter. We want to actually add support for JSONP so that when people request JSONP, we can actually return it. It's just another format. It's not anything we have to support in the controllers themselves. Now in Web API natively, there's no support for JSONP, but there is a project out there called Web API Contrib, which actually has implemented JSONP as a formatter. So we're going to start by going out to NuGet, and you can get to it by searching for Web API Contrib JSONP. And it's the Web API Contrib formatting JSONP package. I'll go ahead and install that in our project, and it adds a quick reference to this project. Then we can simply add the support here. We're first going to create the new formatter by calling new JSONP media type formatter. You can see that this is in the Web API Contrib formatting JSONP namespace. And this is going to lean on another formatter, one that does JSON itself. Since we have already used the configuration for JSON formatter up here, we can just go ahead and include it in here. And then we're just going to add it to the configuration. Formatters, and we're typically going to add it as the first formatter. The reason for this is the standard JSON formatter will look at application/JavaScript and go ahead and return plain old JSON. We're going to get in there so that if someone asks for it, we're going to serve the application/JavaScript formatting for them, and if it's not that format, it'll drop down and use one of the other formatters that matches it. Let's see if we build. Let's head over to Fiddler, and let's go ahead and execute this foods. When we execute the foods, we're getting just the standard JSON format by default because we don't have an accept header. Without an accept header, it defaults to JSON. We could certainly ask for application.json to specifically ask for the type of data we want, and we're going to get the same response. But what if we change this to application/JavaScript? This is going to just return the JSON version because we haven't included a callback. So let's talk a little bit about how JSONP works so that you can get a sense of it. When we ask for a JSONP request, the call to this API is going to attempt to call back into your JavaScript code when you receive it with a method call. So essentially all that JSONP does is wrap this result, this JSON object, in a small piece of JavaScript that calls a function that you have implemented. And so we need to be able to tell the API that there is a query string parameter that's specifying the name of that callback. So if we add to our URL callback, which is the default query string name, and I'll just say foo, when I execute it, it actually just adds this quick little foo at the beginning, and all the way at the end is going to be, if I can find the end, is an end parenthesis. When jQuery Ajax is used, or maybe Angular is being used, when it sees that this is the data type that's coming back, it knows to parse it. And in that parsing, it actually executes this method call. This method call says call a function called foo, which the author of the web page would have written to accept that data. So really all that JSONP is doing is getting around it by pretending that we're downloading a piece of JavaScript to be executed, not pure data. Now we can change the name of the callback here in case you are already using this query parameter, and we can do this in the construction of the formatter itself. The second parameter can be the name of the callback. So if I say CB, because I want something nice and short, then we have to make sure that our callback here, CB, that it works as well. Because again, we specified the name of the callback function that we've implemented that we want the JSONP to call back to. So supporting JSONP is pretty straightforward and simple because the web API contrib people have helped us.